Breaking news today. In its initial statement before the International Criminal Court, Ukraine called Russia a terrorist state. To replace Crimea's multi-ethnic community with discriminatory Russian nationalism, after its occupation and annexation, Ukrainian lawyers told the United Nations highest court on Tuesday that Russia funded rebels' campaign of intimidation and terror in eastern Ukraine beginning in 2014. The allegations were made during hearings in a case brought by Kiev against Russia at the International Court of Justice in connection with Moscow's annexation of the Crimean Peninsula in 2014 and the arming of rebels in eastern Ukraine in the years leading up to Russia's full-scale invasion in February 2022. Ukraine has asked the International Criminal Court to punish Russia for its attacks and crimes in the region, including the July 17, 2014, shooting down of Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 by rebels backed by Russia, which resulted in the deaths of all 298 people on board. In the midst of Europe's deadliest conflict since World War II, the court opened for 4 days of hearings in its grand, wood-paneled Great Hall of Justice. The Kakhovka Dam and hydroelectric power station were damaged, and Kiev and Moscow were pointing fingers at each other over who was to blame. On Tuesday, attorneys representing Kyiv presented their case's legal merits. On Thursday, Russian lawyers will address the bench. Next week, both sides will have another chance to present their case. It could be months before a judge issues a ruling. Ukraine's attorney Harold Koh told the judges that Russia did nothing when it had the opportunity to tell its officials to stop providing funding to groups responsible for violence against civilians. Instead, Russian officials stepped up their illegal supply of money and weapons sending as more lethal weapons arrived in Ukraine and more Ukrainian civilians suffered atrocities. According to Koh, after which Malaysia Airlines flight MH17 was destroyed in July of 2014 after a Buk anti-aircraft system was sent into Ukraine. Pro-Russia forces in eastern Ukraine attacked civilians as part of a campaign of intimidation and terror, according to David Ziontes, another lawyer for Ukraine. This war effort was funded and armed by Russia. The Ukrainian legal team claimed that Russia took no action to thwart or assist Ukraine in its investigation of the money trails. Koh said that after Russia's illegal occupation and annexation of the peninsula, Moscow sought to replace the multi-ethnic community that had characterized Crimea before Russia's intervention with discriminatory Russian nationalism. He told the judges that Russian policy amounts to a long-term project to erase the rights and culture that make Ukraine a proud, multi-ethnic nation, to wipe out what makes Ukrainians Ukrainians and what makes the Crimean Tatars Crimean Tatars. This lawsuit is just one of several related to Ukraine that have been filed against Russia. A separate case brought by Ukraine shortly after Russia's illegal invasion resulted in a preliminary order from the World Court demanding an immediate cessation of hostilities between the two countries. If this is the case, then Kyiv's claim that Russia's use of a false accusation of genocide against Ukraine as a pretext for its invasion on February 24, 2022, constitutes a violation of the 1948 Genocide Convention is correct. In Moscow's view, the court lacks the authority to hear the case. The International Criminal Court is not far away, and its judges have issued an arrest warrant for Russian President Vladimir Putin on charges of deporting and illegally transferring children from Ukraine. Russia is not a part of or subject to the court because it does not accept its authority. Last year, a Dutch court ruled in absentia that 2 Russians and a pro-Russian Ukrainian were responsible for shooting down MH17. Ukraine has also taken Russia to the International Court of Justice over the invasion, and the European Court of Human Rights has heard a case brought by the Netherlands and Ukraine over the downing of flight MH17. Over eastern Ukraine, a Soviet-era missile brought down a passenger jet on its way from Amsterdam to Kuala Lumpur. Russia has always denied any responsibility for the incident. Ukrainian diplomat of high rank Anton Korinevich said, "The Russian Federation has contempt for international law. Within the past 16 months, people everywhere have begun to face this grim truth.